Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden is here at last, and this isn't just another review. As we move through the book, I'm going to outline my ideas for our new Icewind Dale DM Guide series. So I need you to tell me what parts of this book you want to see more of in future videos about how to run Rime of the Frostmaiden. Let's do this. Hi, Bob here, and welcome to Bob World Builder, where we learn how to have more fun playing D&D together. Mostly through DM guides for official campaigns like the Dragon of Icefire Peak, and now Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden. So hit that subscribe button to get your DM guides for this campaign and more every Wednesday. So here she is, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden herself as pictured on the cover. Just a heads up, there will be spoilers in this flip through. We're going to go through most of the book and the overview of the plot at the very least. But if you're like me, don't really believe in spoilers. Just think about it as these are the things that are exciting about this book that are going to make you want to play it and want to run it. This book does have some spooky themes: horror, paranoia, isolation, and this is written for 4 to 6 adventurers. So this is not built for one person, but through our DM Guide series, I'll talk about ways to err around the horror and to adjust this for a single player or a small party like I will be playing it with. And last thing, as we open it up, there's a link in the description if you want to order this book and help out the channel. So I was really excited to see that there are 2 authors, Ashley Warren and Anne Gregerson, who I have worked with, or at least communicated with a little bit on Twitter, because they're awesome DMs Guild authors who were picked up for this book because they're great. And it's just really exciting to see that there's finally some bleed over from the guild to actual Wizards of the Coast products. We have a fun little disclaimer here as always. The windswept tundra of Icewind Dale is the true test of one's mettle. Here, it's survival of the fittest. Don't be fooled by the reindeer with glow-in-the-dark antlers and the tasty knucklehead trout, including the friendlier, more northerly can-knucklehead variety. Icewind Dale is the frostbitten end of the world. You can't spell dice without ice, my friend. And the Frostmaiden is not some demon prince, vampire, lich beholder, crime lord, or archdevil. She's a god, and a cold-hearted one at that. Now, turning over to the table of contents, obviously this is a big book. I don't know if you saw the spine. This is almost as big as the monster manual, 320 pages. So most of that content is in Chapter 1, which covers our 10 towns in pretty good detail, and chapters, I'll just say 3 through 7, which is our main plot, really. But it begins with a 10-page intro, an adventure summary, covers the environment, covers character creation. Those topics are what I'm planning to make the first DM guides in this series about. I think it'd be great to have one about Arctic wilderness, and then another about how to write compelling characters for this adventure. Whether that means characters that are going to be playing in it, or NPCs that might be along with your party. Then of course we'll have a bunch of guides about these 10 towns because each one comes with a quest. And there are 2 town-neutral starter quests, Cold-Hearted Killer and Nature Spirits. So let me know in the comments what you think about lumping some of these towns into 2 or 3 videos instead of 1 for every single town. Chapter 2 is then a number of fantastic locations that are meant to bring life to Icewind Dale. Each of these is kind of its own quest as well, and there are rumors to go along with it that direct your players toward them. And like I said, chapter 3 through 7 is the main story, which we'll see in, I think, the next page or so, with a flowchart of how the actual campaign kind of runs. Then there's an epilogue with a few different endings to the campaign. Summer is coming, Winter Everlasting, and Year of Chilled Marrow. I'm not sure which one of these second 2 it is, but I'll tell you right here, one of them involves some really crazy time travel. So keep that in mind and stick around to the end of the video to get a little bit more detail about that. And then a big chunk of this book is dedicated to monsters with a little section for spells and magic items. And at the very end, that Rime of the Frostmaiden. Check out the video linked up here of my dramatic reading of that poem to kick off your campaign. Now, welcome to the far north. North of the spine of the world and west of the towering Reged Glacier is a frigid expanse where few dare to explore. So this book, of course, takes place in Icewind Dale. It's an Arctic landscape. It's the first thing like that in 5th edition, so it's a great resource. And overall, I'll say, between the towns, those exciting locations, I'm going to mine the heck out of this book for my homebrew campaign, which takes place in a kind of post-apocalyptic Arctic world. And I think this book, even though it's written as a campaign, does a much better job of just behaving like a resource for DMs who might not want to run the story, but still are interested in the book and really the fantastic art that's throughout it. But this part also explains the main plot. So Auril, the Frostmaiden, is on Earth hanging out with some mortals for whatever reason. It explains it kind of in the back. But while she's here, she's doing this thing where every night she flies across the sky on a rock and basically prevents the sun from truly rising. The landscape is covered in twilight for only a few hours a day. Winter is extended for a few years at this point. The townspeople have kind of been adapting by performing these strange sacrifices that they think are appeasing Auril. So your characters will be unwinding some of that, but also facing these other main threats: a Duergar despot forging a dragon out of chardalyn, and a lost city of magic entombed in a glacier. Those are the things that come in chapters 3 to 7. And for those who are big fans of the Driss novels, this book takes place about 100 years after that, but there is at least one little Easter egg, I think, that is an appearance of Driss. So hopefully when we get there, some of you who are bigger fans will be able to confirm that. But the main flow goes as such. Chapter 1 is for 1st to 4th level characters and just takes place around the 10 towns. Again, you can start in any town you want. There are 2 starter quests that can happen in any one of them, and then each town has its own quest. And each one of them is only supposed to take up 1 to 2 sessions of play, so they're meant to be pretty quick, and the guides for those will probably be about weaving them together, so that you will be able to steer your players from any town to any other town, however you want. 2 are these quote-unquote ancillary locations that are accessed with rumors. Number 3 is where our Duergar despot, Xardorok Sunblight, comes in. Duergar tyrant building a chardalyn dragon, so this really cool mineral-like material, to destroy 10 towns. Boom. He's from the Underdark. He's like, hey, it's dark here. I want to take over now. The characters learn of this plot and try to thwart it. However, when the players arrive at his big ol' headquarters, the dragon is flying away toward 10 towns immediately. So it's pretty railroaded. They don't really get the chance to thwart his building of it. They're only able to thwart the destruction of 10 towns by then saying, oh, we just arrived at this headquarters. Let's go right back to 10 towns because now we have to chase this dragon. So I don't love how that's played out here. But anyway, the next chapter 4 is for about 6th level characters, Destruction's Light. This is the dragon's destruction of 10 towns. It's a really short chapter, but it makes for a super compelling, action-packed section that beats the heck, honestly, out of like Cryovane as a dragon threat in Icefire Peak because they're for the same level, 6th level characters, but this is just so much cooler. Chapter 5, Auril's Abode, is just about the island that she's on, where the players will then need to venture to basically get some items that'll help them find this lost city where there is supposedly this hidden, super powerful ancient magic that can end this perma-winter. And then 7 is this necropolis, this dead city. So a nice section here on wilderness survival. Again, this is probably going to be the first real guide in the series. Great tips about extreme cold, avalanches, blizzards, frigid water. So a bunch of this from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Again, making this a great resource if you don't have that book or really want the Dungeon Master's Guide for whatever reason. Some info about the daylight here, overland travel, and later on we'll see a section with a whole bunch of wilderness encounters as well. Pronunciations, backgrounds for characters, oh yeah, and this is going to come in handy for our character creation video as well. Goliaths are now resistant to cold, so that's really convenient. And the character secrets, again, I don't want to dive too deep into this here, but I'll point out a few that I found interesting, like the first one, Alagondar Scion. At some point, Lord Dagult Neverember might send a lone assassin, a nameless, middle-aged woman with a shaved head and a hook for a right hand, to kill the character who has this secret. Because if you watched my Neverwinter video, linked up here, you would know that Lord Dagult Neverember pretty much secretly takes out anybody who's a true Alagondar heir to Neverwinter. Very cool. And I like this one, the Littlest Yeti. If the party happens upon one or more Yetis in the course of this adventure, this secret might reveal itself. So I don't know if this means the character's like secretly a Yeti, or was raised by Yetis or something. There's not actually detail about why the Yetis like this character, and how that actually makes it a secret. But it's just a neat feature, so this one will need some tweaking, but we'll talk about that in the character creation video. And Owlbear Whisperer, this is a fun one because what character has not tried to tame an owlbear at some point? Like, Come on. Now, like I said, the 10 Towns chapter here does a great job of breaking down each town. Again, making this just a great resource for DMs. You get 10 starter towns. Each one doesn't have a ton of detail, but they have things like a tavern, which is like the one necessary thing you need to have in your towns. And each one has its own fleshed out starter quest. And without going too deep into each quest, let's just check them out right here with the summaries. So the town of Bremen has a lake monster. This quest, the characters hunt for a monster terrorizing Bremen's fishers. Bryn Shonder has the Foaming Mugs quest, in which the characters search for a missing supply of iron ingots. Caer Dinaval, Black Swords, in which the characters confront devil-worshipping cultists in a cliff-top castle. So right off the bat, we have hunt the monster, retrieve the things, and confront the cults. Classic D&D quests right here. Caer Koenig has The Unseen, in which the characters solve the mystery behind a number of petty thefts. That's awesome. Dugan's Hole, Hold Up, in which the characters cross paths with a pair of winter wolves and rescue 2 missing youngsters. Oh yeah, but winter wolves can talk? I learned that recently. So maybe they have their own motives here. East Haven, Toil and Trouble, in which the characters search for the missing fishers in a hag's lair. Good Mead, The Mead Must Flow, in which the characters retrieve several stolen casks of honey mead. Then Lonelywood has The White Moose, in which the characters hunt an evil white moose that is terrorizing local hunters and loggers. This one honestly just reminds me of the hare in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Really curious to see how dangerous this moose is. Targos has Mountain Climb, in which the characters search for an expedition that went missing. And Tourmaline is A Beautiful Mine, in which the characters go looking for trouble in a nearby gem mine. So not a lot of details from these descriptions, but one of the important things to note here, let's take a look at this advancement section. Experience is completely thrown out the window, folks. It's all milestone. So the characters advance to level 2 after completing their first quest in this chapter, whatever it may be, and they advance to level 3 after completing 3 quests in this chapter, and advance to 4 after completing 5 quests in this chapter. So you really only need to play 5 out of the maybe 12 quests, 12 or 13 quests in this whole chapter. But of course it says completing more than the required number of quests can improve their standing in 10 towns. So for the sake of building their reputation among the people, which is going to be important in this landscape where the people are kind of crazy and in some cases sacrificing others, it's going to be good to have a good reputation. But we also have an overview of all 10 towns, information again about wilderness survival here, so it's kind of broken up throughout the book, but I will be piecing it together for you in the next video. Magic, basically explaining that this is a pretty low magic environment. Most healing and stuff isn't going to be available. There's no wizard here to identify your magic items. And our starter quests. So we have one that is focused on basically a bounty hunt after a serial killer, and another one where you're going after, trying to capture, I should say, one of these little chwingas, if I'm pronouncing that right. These tiny, tiny nature spirits, like that's a fork. These things are freaking small. So I feel like this is going to be one that a lot of people are interested in just because it's so fantastic compared to the serial killer one, which is still interesting, but not quite as interesting. Though it could have a crazy twist that I just haven't read yet. I'll let you know. Now, rather than giving detail for every one of these towns, we'll just see they do have awesome crests for each town, a map for each town, awesome art. There's our lake monster. Great NPC art for some of our characters. But without going into detail on each one here, let me give a little plug for a series of one-shots that I will be running, paid one-shots that patrons and really anybody can join potentially, but patrons will have the first dibs because my home group is not going to play probably all 10 of these towns, and as you know, I prefer to have played a quest before I make a DM guide about it. And so in order to play all of these things, I'm going to need to supplement my home game with some one-shots with you, potentially. So my assumption is that they're going to be pretty fast and loose. I don't want to make a whole Roll20 campaign where many different people popping in and out of these different sessions might have to make characters. So I'm thinking of just doing something very low end where we're just kind of in a Google Meet conversation, doing a lot of theater of mind, maybe a little more roleplay heavy in that case. If anything, that'll be starting in late September or early October. So keep an eye on the community page. And again, if you are a patron or a YouTube member, you'll get the notification about a day or two early And the higher tier you are, you'll be notified even a little bit sooner, but hopefully still give everybody a chance to join in. There's our dreaded white moose of Lonely Wood. It actually has blood all over it, so that is pretty creepy. And let's just skip over to Chapter 2, Icewind Dale. So in this chapter, characters gain a level after spending 2 or 3 game sessions exploring Icewind Dale. Okay. Or, a little bit more in-depth, characters gain a level for neutralizing the threats in 2 or 3 dangerous locations. And finally, more specific, characters gain a level if they accomplish an extraordinary feat, such as ending, so basically just giving some specific quest locations to explore. But again, an awesome resource for any DM who's trying to run an Arctic campaign, because this is where we get our Wilderness Encounters section. So not only do we get a table about how many encounters might happen that day or night, and then a random table of these more in-depth encounters. And this first one, Arveaturus, I should have looked this up in the guide. I think this is our Driss Easter egg. And it just says, Arve the White Worm and her mysterious rider. So I feel like that's Driss, but you tell me, folks. And again, these locations are certainly going to come up in those one-shots. Submarine whale, love that. We have some great little maps, like the black cabin here, that can be used for any old cabin anywhere. Interesting item, the summer star, maybe like a piece of a comet. Nice handouts. The cackling chasm. Got some knolls up here in the Arctic. Nice. And I love this art piece of these white dragons. So hopefully we can use these guys to draw some connections to Cryovane in Icespire Peak. That's definitely something we'll be looking into. So without diving into that one in too much detail, let's skip on over to Chapter 3. Again, this is where our characters show up at Xardorok Sunblight's fortress, and upon approaching, basically, the dragon flies away. So again, pretty railroaded here, but it's really cool. The location is basically a giant dungeon, and there is a plug early on in here that says you have a chance to meet Xardorok's sons earlier on in one of the towns. And there's also an individual here, Grandolpha Musgart, who is kind of being courted by Xardorok, but is not interested in him, and in fact wants to take over, wants to basically launch a coup against him. But the thing is, your players will probably arrive here, and then you'll jump right to Chapter 4. Just freaking shooting a laser. That's incredible. And your characters will then be just chasing after the dragon, like, oh, we just left 10 towns to go to Sunblight, now we gotta chase the dragon back. The thing is, they meet an important NPC on that trek back, or I think right as it leaves Sunblight, who can get them there quicker, and then that NPC is also important for the following quest about getting into the Necropolis City. So hopefully that NPC doesn't die in any one of these encounters here. But what I was saying before is that this is a level 6 encounter. This is chasing I'm pretty sure CR11 dragon that shoots a freaking laser around 10 towns in this Arctic wilderness, where then the people are going to be attacking you apparently along the way. Like, crazy stuff happens here. There's details for all the casualties that can happen in each town if your players don't get there in time. It's very exciting. And comparing this, which is this super climactic event, end of the first arc of this campaign at level 6, to the end of the entire Dragon of Icespire Peak quest at level 6, this just blows it out of the water. So I'm really excited by this, and I want to incorporate some elements of this into my game as well. Then the next chapter, Auril's Abode, is another pretty short one. It's, one location, this very cool snowflake-shaped island in the sea of moving ice. Everything is covered in fog. Extreme cold is a little bit harsher here. There are many frozen creatures that, if destroyed, some kind of avatar of Auril appears and is like, hey, stop that. But obviously much worse. The thing is, characters also have the chance to end the campaign at this location, because they can defeat Auril here. But to do so, they have to pass a number of these tests. The first one really threw me off, the test of cruelty, where basically they're teleported somewhere and they have to behave cruelly. But the point is, the whole time they're like being heroes, and then it's like, okay, now you need to be rude and mean and potentially life-threatening against some innocent people to pass this test, to then enter one of the areas in here that they need to get into to get an item that they need for later on. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but overall it's exciting, and I'm sure one of your characters will kind of bite the bullet, sort of knowing what needs to be done in order to pass this test. Not every character needs to pass each one, which is convenient. And then the Caves of Hunger. This is our hidden, sort of labyrinthine dungeon. There's a big map coming up here in a second. There it is. But actually, let me jump back to the character advancement. Characters gain a level when they reach H39. Easy as that. Potentially. There are a lot of rooms in here, obviously, with some cool tunnels dug by different kinds of creatures. So it's some of it's mines, some of it's natural formations. This is where we get our Gnoll vampire and apparently some kobold vampire spawns as well. I was really jealous of this encounter with a giant golem head that can talk to you because there's something like this in the Secrets of Icefire doc, and I was planning on doing something like this for the Neverwinter Wood doc that I want to write as well. But now it's just everywhere, man. And this video is definitely getting longer than I wanted, so let's go to the last chapter here. Oh, yeah, a little bit gory. Cover that up for the kids. And we have our necropolis. Woohoo! So this is our crashed, once floating ancient city. Some giant towers around it. Your characters have to explore, I want to say, 8 different towers. So it seems like your campaign might sort of grind to a halt toward this chapter, because it's like, okay, we just fought this crazy dragon, we just encountered Auril herself, and then we explore these caves and get to this city, and now we have to navigate each one of these things and kind of get different pieces of a puzzle, so to speak. I don't think it's actually like little MacGuffins in each one of these areas, but basically they do have to explore quite thoroughly, from what I could tell, to find the magic they need to end the rhyme, if they haven't already. But speaking of ending the rhyme, this campaign, again, has multiple endings, so if they slay Auril or use that crazy magic to end it, summer's going to come, and it gives a little information about what that'll look like. Oh, of course there's a piece here about our Scroll of Tarask summoning. We have Winter Everlasting, in case they don't stop her, and then this time travel piece that I mentioned, the Year of Chilled Marrow, where your characters are sent back, I want to say, over 1,500 years. So that's going to create just a whole new campaign that maybe is going to be published. I don't know, but it really doesn't give you a lot to work with here, because they even say that the Sword Coast is completely different. The cities of Neverwinter and Waterdeep don't exist yet. Like, none of the stuff that has been published so far for 5e is this ancient. So it's an exciting ending, but they really kind of leave you hanging. Anyway, some fun trinkets. That'll be cool. Here are our character secrets. I guess you can photocopy these. It would have been nice if they gave you a tear-out sheet, like in the Essentials kit, so you could break these up and actually have them as different cards, because the idea is that your characters, or your players I should say, will just choose a random card and decide if they like it or not. If they don't, it gets discarded, and then they can maybe choose another one. But that way they're not seeing all of them and then knowing what secrets the other players might have. Now we'll just flip through these creatures here. And again, I need you to let me know what videos you want to see in this series. Should I do a single short video for every town in 10 towns? Let me know. Should I bunch them up into just a few videos so they'll come out at a little quicker pace? And remember to subscribe to stay notified about this series as it evolves, and to get notifications about the one-shots as they are coming out, probably in October. Potentially joining Patreon to get first dibs in those one-shots. There's our 3 kobold and a trenchcoat piece. And yes, join Patreon like Greg and Matt and Jacob and Vanessa and Miguel and Christian and Warstormer all did this past week. Your support is really what makes these videos possible. Man, that guy's creepy. Why can't a snow golem just look like a snowman? Why's it gotta be so creepy? Oh, but this is the worst. Let's just end on this fine note. Look at that eldritch horror, my friends. That is just terrifying. I do not want to know where that guy comes up. Thank you for watching, thank you for your support, and keep building.